And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Saturday, August 10th, 2024. And this aviation outlook will go through Sunday and on Monday. As of this Saturday, we have low pressure that's working its way through the lower Bering coming into the southwest coast. And it will have gale force winds along areas of Bristol Bay and in through the Alaska Peninsula. And it's going to bring areas of moderate to heavy rainfall all the way from coastal areas of the southwest to up along, say, the Susitna Valleys and along the eastern Kenai, Prince William Sound. Another at least 1 to 3 inches of rain. There are flood watches in effect there, and we have flood watches for the Susitna Valley. So this is going to be a very wet system, especially once we get into Saturday afternoon, evening, continuing into the day on Sunday. We're also going to see some showers spread eastward by Sunday into northern parts of Panhandle. Some of the heaviest rain will fall around Yakutat as the frontal boundary works its way gradually eastward. Sunday afternoon, there could even be an isolated thunderstorm pop up along the Alcan border, especially Yukon Flats there, vicinity of Eagle. And we expect extensive IFR conditions out over the northern and northeastern Gulf Sunday afternoon. To the west, MVFR conditions along the Alaska Range, though I would not rule out some IFR conditions through some of these passes simply due to the moisture load associated with this system. Also colder freezing levels aloft, so there could be some snow in the higher elevations as a result by the time we get into Sunday night, early Monday morning. But back out to the west, IFR, eastern Arctic coast down through the Bering Strait, St. Matthew, St. Lawrence, Nunavik Island, St. Paul, the Aleutians. Monday morning, we find on the backside of the system IFR conditions west arm of the Alaska Range into Bristol Bay, as well as up along areas of the eastern North Slope, eastern Arctic coast, northwest coast to the Bering Strait, including places like Wales and Steller. MVFR conditions expected into the Panhandle, pushing in with that front and some showers. And then to the west, extensive IFR through the lower Bering Sea and the Aleutians. For Monday afternoon, we find IFR conditions lingering through the lower and southeastern Gulf, pockets of MVFR in the Panhandle, and then areas of MVFR along the central Alaska Range back up in the areas of the Tanana Valley and areas up through the Kuskokwim, middle upper Kuskokwim Valley. And then extensive IFR out over the Bering, especially west of St. Lawrence, St. Matthew, and St. Paul down through the Aleutian chain. So pass conditions for Sunday, Anaktuvik Pass is looking MVFR there in the central Brooks Range. Adigan Pass, MVFR conditions. As we drop down to Lake Clark and Merrill, generally MVFR conditions are expected through the Alaska Range, but I wouldn't rule out there could be some IFR conditions in some of the passes. It's going to be close. Rainy Pass, MVFR. Of course, we're going to have areas of rain with some lower ceilings and even some a little bit of fog as a possibility. Windy Pass, MVFR. MVFR, Isabel Pass. The other thing, too, through the Alaska Range, into Saturday, there could be some turbulence as a result of those stronger initially southeast-south wind flow ahead of the system. It should relax a bit, though, as we go through Sunday. Most of that happening right now, Saturday into early Sunday. Further east, Mentastipas should generally stay VFR. It's a little drier further east toward the Alcan border on Sunday. And then Tanita Pass across the Copper River Basin, MVFR conditions. And Portage Pass early Sunday morning, IFR becoming MVFR. And then for the north end of the Panhandle, Chilkoot and White Passes both MVFR on Sunday. So we can see the progress of this trough, this main trough that's been kind of sitting out over here in the Bering this past week is shifting eastward in through the mainland. We have the surface low, secondary development going to happen along the Gulf Coast, as often the case when you have a front pushing east. Ahead of the front, freezing levels aloft are much higher, warmer dome of air, 14,000 feet up into the central Gulf. Back to the west, though, we have freezing levels at or below 4,000 feet here through the lower Yukon. And as this feature drifts eastward, lower freezing levels, you're going to see some snow as the system winds down. Snow in the higher elevations of the Alaska Range, maybe even some termination dust in some of the areas, say up above 5,000-6,000 feet by early Monday morning in the Talkeetna Mountains, maybe even some of the Chugach Mountains. And looking at the icing threat, this system is rather moist. You've had a feed of moisture coming from the south as well as push in from the southwest off the Bering. So considerable icing is possible throughout the interior, all the way even up to the eastern Arctic coast, but especially along the south slope of the Brooks Range, the Yukon Valley, Alaska Range, and there just north and west, above 6,000 feet there, as well as in the far north, but above 14,000 feet because of that warmer air aloft ahead of the front in through areas of the northern central Gulf. And then back to the west, there is another front that's going to be coming in out of eastern Russia, and with that feature ahead of it and in the wake of the low that has come inland, we may find some moderate icing above 8,000 feet in areas of the Bering. So here's the jet stream at 30,000 feet. We have a jet core upwards of 140 knots right up across the southeast mainland. Southwesterly flow aloft, that's why this is a moist system coming in initially off of the lower Bering and North Pacific. In the wake of it, here's the hint of the next trough of the system that'll be coming in off of eastern Russia for, say, Monday into Tuesday. And here's the wind field at 9,000 feet or 700 millibars. Strongest winds over the Yukon Territory, upwards of 50 to 60 knots. We have winds upwards of 40, 45 knots in the Gulf, and then pockets back here to the west over the north end of the Alaska Peninsula area, the Katmai area, northwest winds to 50 knots, and then ahead of the next trough out here in the north central Bering, we're finding winds as high as 50 knots ahead of that. And then by Sunday for 3,000 foot level, we find some winds coming in, bit of a barrier jet along the front as it approaches the northeastern Gulf Coast, 35 to 45 knots. In the wake of it, 40 to 50 knot winds, highest there, Kamishak Bay coming through the entrance of Cook Inlet, and then back to the west. The next little trough coming through here does have 40 to 50 knot winds ahead and behind it. And the greatest threat for turbulence then on Sunday will be across areas of south central into the northeastern mainland and then northeastern Gulf Coast, all the way back along the western Gulf Coast, Kenai Peninsula, around Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island, surface to 6,000 feet, surface to 8,000 feet as you get up in Talkeetna Mountains, and then back here toward Bristol Bay and at least the Alaska Peninsula. We do anticipate turbulence there, surface to 4,000 feet, and I would even add areas around perhaps here St. Lawrence Island with that next trough coming on in from the north and the west.